All right, so this chapter is pretty critical. Right now in the news, there was a situation where a place in Gaza had airstrikes on it. Now, Gaza is right in here, this little thing here. And that's by Israel. And so so the deal is there's Israelis who there's a land that's divided up between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the Israelis aren't supposed to build on that Palestinian land, but they have been. And because they won't stop it, the Palestinians have had to rely on a terrorist organization to actually make stuff happen. Which kind of sucks because, hey, it's a terrorist organization. So, the terrorist organization basically, can't remember. Did they shoot rockets? No, they didn't. Did they? I can't remember. I think they did. They shot something off. And then there were airstrikes on that location. And of course, they're like, the terrorist organization crossed a red line. The question is, if you hadn't encroached on their land, would they have crossed the red line? So, that is kind of an issue that is ongoing between this area and also this West Bank. Also belongs to the Palestinians. So right here, these two. But it is not called Palestine. So officially, basically, well, in some places they're starting to recognize Palestine. But essentially, this land was taken by the British and the United States and given to the Jews after the Holocaust. All right, I'll get more into it as we go through this thing, I think. Yeah. All right, so what was the name of the Jewish underground army? All right, so we're looking at this area in here throughout this chapter. So we'll be looking at Syria. Here's Iraq and Iran, Saudi Arabia. We don't normally have issues with Egypt or Saudi Arabia, really. It's normally something in this. It's always like this area is very heated. All right, underground army. Let's go. A tough and determined new kid moved to the Middle Eastern Bloc in 1948 and was going to have to fight to survive there. He knew what he was up against and moved quickly to prepare for the struggle. The Jewish underground army in Palestine, the Haganah, had armed itself with modern weapons from Europe. Its officers were well trained and many had combat experience. There were no illusions about an easy start. The Arab nations had left no doubt that they were determined to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. So, before this situation, so this happened because World War II, a lot of Jews in Europe, their houses and homes were taken over by the non-Jewish Germans. And so they kind of didn't have somewhere to go to. And they asked them, hey, what land would you like? And of course they're going to say, the Holy Land. And Britain had control of this at that point. And basically the United States and Britain agreed to kind of give them this land. Before that time, Christians Jewish people, Muslim people were all living in essential, like, quote unquote, harmony as best as it could, in a sense. After this, it all got crazy. So you take this land, you stick a bunch of Jewish people there, you surround them with a bunch of Muslim nations who are mad that this has been given to the Jewish people. And now you're going to have a problem. So that's how this became one of the newer countries, number one. How it started in the first place. And that's where hostilities started. All right. So I have no idea if I pronounced this thing right, by the way. Zero idea. So this is an ongoing situation. So if you ever wonder, oh, why are we learning social studies? Well, here's one of the reasons that's still happening. We're going to leave it as it is, but it looks like it's supposed to have an E in it. So leave it the way it is, and if it's red underlined, I think I'm going to change it later, but also leave it at this. All right. During the 1949 war, the Arab population in Israel dropped from 1.3 million to... All right, so here we have that underground army. Trouble began May 15th, 1948, the day after... Okay. The day after Israel officially moved in. 5 Arab nations from Egypt to Iraq contributed troops to attacks on Israel, but these were poorly planned, and within a year all nations agreed to an armistice with Israel. During that war, many Arabs left Israel, but no Arab nation wanted them, and they ended up in camps behind barbed wire. By 1949, the Arab population of Israel had dropped from the 1.3 million it had been in 1946 to only 160,000. Those who'd lost their homes or who were born in camps that were set up had bitter feelings against Israel and the United States, whom they blamed for creating Israel. Between 1948 and January 1st, 1956, 771,000 Jews moved to Israel. So we've been a giant supporter of Israel, giving them billions in one year. I can't remember exactly the year, but billions of dollars. I think it was 7 billion. Apache helicopters, ammunition, weapons, etc. Alleged nuclear weapons, which is most likely. All right. The leader of Israel from 1949 to 1963 was David Ben something. Let's see. The government in Israel was democratic from 1949 to 1963. The prime minister was David Ben Gurion. Again, I might be pronouncing these definitely wrong. The legislature, I'm looking this up. I need to put this in. Is this also spelled? I can't believe this. Okay.
Kezet.
Kezet. All right, perfect. All right. No, that's not right. That's not even. I spelled it wrong. Brilliant. Nothing better than when you spell it wrong into Google. Brilliant. Knesset. Brilliant.
Knesset.
Knesset. Knesset? Okay, fine. Going with that. The Knesset included members from many different parties, the largest being the Mapai. Since it did not have a majority, the Mapai was forced to make deals with the smaller parties to get anything done. So they had more than one party, which is what kind of is the problem. And thank you for putting it in the chat. Very helpful. So this one, I'll go back, I think, and put in pronunciations for all of these later. So if you need to see them, they'll be in there. All right. The largest party of the Israeli legislature was where are we at? Where'd you go? Mapai or Mapai? Yeah, I'm gonna have to look all this up. Sometimes these are, in other languages, they're spelled kind of in different ways, especially if I put the spelling in, that's the official spelling in that country, and we change it to make it easier to pronounce. All right. Abdul Nasser wanted the Aswan Dam because... Alright. Surrounded by enemy nations, Israel built up its military strength. Men served 3 years in the army and then served in the reserves. Unmarried women served 20 months and then entered the reserves. The Israeli Navy in 1968 included 2 destroyers and 4 submarines. The Air Force had 350 of the most advanced planes available and some of the best pilots in the world. Essentially, we helped them out. There's a lot of support. If a politician criticizes Israel, they will have probably all of the parties jumping down their throats, which in the beginning was probably, they needed that support. Now they're super powerful. They're definitely one of the most powerful countries within their country. So they might not influence other countries as much, but they're definitely more powerful than the Palestinians in any way, shape, or form. And as, who said it? With great power comes great responsibility. Well, the responsibility part seems to need to catch up a little bit. At least in what we see in the news and what happened recently where civilians were killed is really the issue. All right. In Egypt, although the United States was friendly toward Israel, it also tried being friendly with other nations in the region. Egypt's ruler after 1954 was Gamal Abdel Nasser, who had ideas about making his nation stronger. His grand dream was to build the Aswan Dam on the Nile River to increase Egypt's electrical output and prevent the annual floods. The United States and Great Britain agreed to pay for the first studies, but Nasser hinted that he might see if the Russians would give him a better deal. The United States and Britain withdrew their offer to help. Nasser then angrily threatened to seize the Suez Canal from its British and French stockholders. Israel attacked Egypt on October 29th, and British and French paratroopers landed near the canal on October 31st, 1956. Russia, seeing the opportunity to win friends with the Arabs, threatened to send volunteers to help Egypt. President Eisenhower used U.S. influence against its allies in the United Nations, and a ceasefire was arranged. So this is again where we come in with the whole Russia versus the United States and Britain coming in, and essentially if they weren't allies of the US, they were probably allies of Russia. Very like two-sided. All right, he wanted to prevent Egypt's annual floods. He wanted to increase Egypt's electrical output. He wanted the dam for both of these reasons. He wanted the dam for both of these reasons. The Iraqi blank wanted to separate from Iraq and join with others in Iran and Turkey. All right, Syria, which was an issue, how many years ago now? I can't remember. So there was another issue that came up more recent than this. All right, Syria was a nation divided by religion. It had a large Christian minority between those who looked to Egypt and those who preferred Iraqi leadership, and by those who preferred modern and those favoring traditional Arab lifestyles. The largest Syrian political party was the Ba'ath, and it favored Arab unity. In 1957, the Ba'ath Party asked Nasser to unite the two countries, and they joined in 1958 as the United Arab Republic, UAR. The union did not work, and in 1961, the UAR broke up. Iraq was still a nation with only a few wealthy landowners and a vast majority of people who were very poor. In 1958, a coup rebellion inside the government, led by Colonel Kazim, took the lives of the king and his advisors. This was the beginning of a constant struggle for power as one ruler after another was overthrown. Adding to the tension was the desire of Iraqi Kurds to unite with other Kurds in Iran and Turkey to form their own nation. Meanwhile, Iraq's foreign policy turned away from Britain and the United States towards Russia. All right, let's see. What was the Kurds? So number 7 is Kurds. Which of the following did Israel not capture during the 1967 war? Syria, Golan Heights, Sinai Desert, and West Bank. Jordan, east of Israel, was now home to thousands of Palestinian refugees. In 1953, King Hussein became ruler of that troubled land. There were many attempts to kill him or overthrow his government, but he held firm with the help of his army. Inside Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan was one unifying thought: to destroy the state of Israel. So here we've got Jordan right next to Israel. West Bank, Gaza in here, this little thing in here. And this is how many refugees, I guess, were in each place by the 1,000. So 75,000, 100,000, 70,000, 280,000, etc. The 1967 war. In 1966, Syria began picking fights with Israel, and Israel responded with air raids. Egypt agreed to help Syria and Nasser close the Suez Canal to Israeli ships. Jordan joined the other Arabs. In a war lasting only 6 days, Israel captured the entire Sinai Desert to the east bank of the Suez Canal. Hang on, where is it? Oh, here it is down here. Suez Canal. This water is going to be absurdly important to everybody, and it's one of the reasons that the Palestinians have this Gaza Strip, because the West Bank does not have this water access here. So Suez Canal was blocked off. All right. All right. Where am I at? Jordan's territory west of the Jordan River, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights from Syria. Israel captured the entire Sinai Desert to the east of the Suez Canal, Jordan's territory west of the Jordan River, the West Bank, and Golan Heights from Syria. Israel offered to trade the captured land for peace treaties, but the defeated neighbors refused. So they have... So we have Suez Canal. So they have this... So they took Gaza. You can see here that Egypt controlled Gaza, and the Israelis were going to take that. And this was part of Egypt, and they ended up taking some of this. And they took the West Bank, and up here the Golan Heights. So if you can see here, the West Bank was basically Jordanian controlled. All right, so they took that. All right, which of the following Syria. They did not. Syria is the one they did not capture. The PLO moved its operations to blank after they threatened King Hussein's control. The Palestine Liberation Organization was an outgrowth of this war. In 1969, it chose Yasser Arafat as its leader. So many Palestinians in Jordan joined the PLO that they threatened King Hussein's control of his own nation. In 1970, its troops put down the PLO, which moved its operations to Lebanon instead. So, Lebanon. The Yom Kippur War of 1973. Egypt and Syria jointly attacked Israel at the beginning of its Yom Kippur religious observance, October 6, 1973, and caught Israel completely off guard. After some territory had been taken, the Israelis regrouped and stormed back. They not only recovered the ground they had lost, but drove Egyptians beyond the Suez Canal, and now Israel held both of its banks. Guns had not worked, but the Arabs now found a new weapon: oil. So you can see here all of what they have, how they got these people backward. And same up here. So oil is going to be the big thing. So this is Lebanon. We will not be doing the chapter on oil. We don't have time. But oil is still a big thing there. All right, so that's that chapter.